I always believed that betrayal has a scent. Not something obvious like cheap perfume or whiskey-soaked regret. No, real betrayal smells like a slow change, like the crispness of new fabric softener on clothes that weren't washed at home, or the citrusy tang of a cologne you've never worn but suddenly lingers on your wife's skin. It's subtle. Insidious. It seeps into your life so gently that you don't notice until one day the air in your own home feels foreign. That day came on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were predictable: morning meetings, a quick gym session, lunch at my desk, and by 7 I was home. Except this Tuesday, home felt different. Virginia was in the bedroom, standing in front of the mirror, adjusting the hem of a dress I hadn't seen before. A sleek black number. Her hair was straighter than usual, her lips redder. She looked expensive, polished in a way that didn't match the simple dinner with the girls she had mentioned over breakfast. Going somewhere special? I leaned against the doorframe, studying her reflection. She didn't startle, didn't even look at me right away. Just smoothed the fabric down her hip and gave me a small, absent smile. Just dinner, I told you. Yes. She had told me. But what she hadn't told me was why she suddenly looked like a woman trying to impress someone new. You look nice, I said, testing. This was the moment she should have turned, laughed, maybe kissed my cheek and said something dismissive. Instead, her fingers skimmed the neckline of her dress, almost as if she was checking if it was too much. Thanks, she murmured, then reached for her phone. At the time, I didn't say anything. Didn't push. I had been married long enough to know that confrontation rarely yielded truth. The truth, when people were trying to hide it, had to be caught, like a fish too clever for the first cast of the net. So I let her leave. And then I sat in the quiet house, staring at the empty wine glass she had left on the counter. A half-drunk pour of something too expensive to waste. I swirled it once, watched the deep red legs slide down the glass, and took a sip. The signs were small at first. The gradual shift in affection, the way she started coming home later and later, the cautious way she answered her phone when I was around. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. After all, I had seen too many men wreck their marriages over nothing more than paranoia. But then there were the coincidences. Like the time I picked up her car from the shop and found a box of men's cologne in the back seat. Expensive, designer, and unopened. The kind of gift you buy for someone you want to impress. Who's this for? I had asked casually when she got home. She blinked, clearly caught off guard for just a fraction of a second before recovering. Oh, that? A gift for my brother. Virginia had no brother. I didn't say anything. Just nodded, let it sit. Let her think she got away with it. A week later, I saw her in the living room, curled on the couch with her phone, giggling. A real, unfiltered laugh, one I hadn't heard in months. But when I walked in, she went silent. Locked the screen. Set the phone down like it was nothing. Something funny? I asked, pretending not to notice. Just a meme, she said. Too fast. I smiled. Said nothing. I started small. Watching. Listening. Noticing the things that didn't quite add up. Like how she suddenly had girls' nights twice a week when before she barely had time for one. Or how she started taking an interest in fitness, spending extra hours at the gym but never coming home sweaty. Then there were the work trips, except she didn't work. The stories had holes, but they weren't gaping ones. Not yet. She was careful, just not careful enough. And so I gave her space. Let her run wild with her secrets, let her feel comfortable in the lie. I kissed her goodnight. I told her she looked beautiful. I played my role to perfection, the picture of the trusting, overworked husband who was just too busy to see what was right in front of him. She never questioned it. People like Virginia never do. Then came the cologne. It had been sitting in her car for a week before I decided to check again. I opened the glove compartment and, sure enough, the box was gone. No sign of it, no receipt, no casual mention of it being gifted away. And that's when I knew it was time to stop guessing. So I hired someone to do the dirty work for me. The private investigator's name was Lou, thick around the middle with tired eyes and a nicotine problem. He didn't look like much, but his reputation was solid. Cheating wife? He asked when we met in a dimly lit diner. He didn't sound surprised. I nodded. I need proof. Photos. Videos. Whatever you can get. Lou took a slow sip of his coffee, eyeing me over the rim. You looking for a divorce angle or something else? I smiled, but there was no humor in it. Something else. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. 2 weeks, he said. You'll have everything you need. The first few days were nothing. Virginia's schedule was predictable, her movements normal, at least on the surface. But then on the 4th day, Lou sent me a text. Got something. You free tonight? I replied with one word, yes. An hour later, I was sitting in the back of his car, staring at a small collection of photos spread across the center console. Virginia. Dressed in that same black dress. Her hand resting lightly on the arm of a man I'd never seen before. A man who looked rich. Confident. The kind of man who probably thought he was untouchable. They were at a restaurant. An expensive one. One I had taken her to before. I flipped through the pictures, slow and methodical. Virginia, smiling. Virginia, leaning in just a little too close. Virginia, touching his knee under the table. Then the last one. Virginia, pressed against him in the parking lot, his hands on her waist. A kiss. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was surprised, but because this was the moment. The exact second in time where my suspicions became reality. Where my patience solidified into something sharp and cold. I let out a breath, slow and steady. Lou shifted in his seat. You okay? I slid the photos back into the envelope. Yeah, I said, voice calm. The funny thing about betrayal is how quickly it turns into routine. Virginia would get dressed in front of the mirror, checking herself from every angle, unaware that I already knew who she was dressing for. She'd leave for her girls' night, blowing me a kiss like a devoted wife, never realizing that I had already seen her with another man's hands on her waist. She lied so easily, so effortlessly, that I almost had to admire it. Almost. But admiration wasn't part of the plan. No, the plan was ruin. And it started with the money. Virginia had no idea how our finances worked. Oh, she liked spending it, swiping cards without a second thought, planning vacations, filling our home with overpriced decor that she lost interest in within weeks. But she had never once checked a bank statement. Never logged into an account. She assumed the money would always be there, like running water or electricity, just another convenience of life. And that made things easy for me. The first thing I did was start siphoning funds. Slowly, methodically. A few thousand here, a few thousand there. Just enough to go unnoticed. Then I began selling off our joint assets. The lake house? Gone. The extra car she never drove? Sold. A few investments under both our names? Cashed out. It wasn't about the money. It was about control. Virginia thought she was pulling the strings. That she had the power. She was wrong. A week passed. Then another. Lou kept sending me updates. More photos. More proof. Different restaurants. A hotel this time. A high-end suite that I had probably paid for. Each new piece of evidence felt less like a betrayal and more like confirmation that I was right. And there was nothing more dangerous than a man who knew he was right. By the time Virginia finally came home late one night, her hair slightly disheveled, the faint scent of unfamiliar cologne clinging to her dress, I wasn't even angry anymore. I was ready. She kicked off her heels, yawning, stretching her arms above her head like she was exhausted from an honest night out. Good dinner? I asked, watching her from the couch. She froze for half a second, just a flicker of hesitation before forcing a casual smile. Yeah. Lisa and Hannah got into a huge fight over some stupid reality show. I nodded, sipping my whiskey. Sounds entertaining. She laughed, then leaned down and kissed my cheek. A reflex automatic. A habit that no longer meant anything. I spent the next few days finalizing the details. Every account was rerouted. The house? Transferred to my name only. The cars? Mine. The credit cards? Cancelled, replaced, wiped clean. Virginia had spent years building a life of comfort, oblivious to the fact that I was the one holding the foundation together. And in just one move I was about to pull it all out from under her. The night before I left, I cooked dinner. A perfect, home-cooked meal, filet mignon, roasted potatoes, a bottle of wine. The kind of meal that made it seem like everything was fine. Virginia came home late again. Apologized. Said she had lost track of time. I just smiled and poured her a glass of wine. She drank it without hesitation. Because she still thought I was the fool. The next morning I was gone. And so was everything else. Virginia came home that evening expecting warmth, comfort, familiarity. Instead, she found an empty house. No furniture. No paintings. No expensive rugs. The fridge? Empty. The wine rack? Cleared out. The closet? Stripped bare except for her clothes, hanging limply like forgotten ghosts. She ran upstairs, her breath quick and shallow, through open drawers, empty. Checked the safe, gone. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone. She called me once. Then twice. Then a third time. The line was disconnected. Then she tried the bank. Her accounts? Frozen. Her credit cards? Declined. Her life? Over. And the best part? I wasn't even there to see it. Virginia must have gone through the 5 stages of grief in record time. Denial? That was easy to picture, her standing in the middle of the stripped-bare house, blinking like she had just walked into the wrong life. Anger? That one was inevitable. I imagined her screaming, throwing things that weren't there, slamming doors that no longer led anywhere. Bargaining? Maybe she thought calling the bank would fix it. Maybe she thought I'd answer if she texted something sweet, something regretful, something pathetic. Depression? That would come later. But acceptance? That would take a long, long time. And I wasn't done yet. I had left town by then. A new city, a fresh start. A place where my name wasn't tied to a woman who had mistaken my silence for ignorance. I rented a penthouse temporary just until I decided where I wanted to settle. I had enough money to take my time. Enough patience to let the final pieces of my revenge play out. And then 2 days after I disappeared, my phone rang. Not my old number. That was dead. This was my new number. One I had given to exactly 2 people, Lou and my lawyer. I glanced at the screen. Lou. I picked up. Talk to me. A chuckle on the other end. Your wife is having a real bad day. I smirked. Tell me. She spent the first night at a hotel, nothing fancy, guess she was trying to conserve whatever cash she had left. This morning, she went to see a lawyer. Looks like she's trying to file for divorce, probably hoping she can get a piece of whatever's left. I took a sip of my coffee. She's in for a surprise. Lou laughed. Yeah. Her lawyer told her the house was already in your name. Bank accounts? Closed. Assets? Gone. She left the office looking like someone kicked her in the stomach. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the city skyline. And the boyfriend? Ah, now that's interesting, Lou said, amusement thick in his voice. She went to see him right after. Showed up at his office looking desperate. And he wasn't expecting that. A pause. Turns out our guy has a wife. I raised an eyebrow. Well. Yup. Wife, kids, the whole 9 yards. Guess Virginia thought she was trading up, but he thought she was just a fun side project. Soon as she started acting clingy, he shut her down real fast. I smiled. Perfect. So she's got nothing, I'm mused. Oh, she's got something. Lou sounded entertained. A whole lot of regret. I let the words sink in, savoring the moment. Virginia had thought she was playing a game. She had smiled at me over dinner while lying to my face. She had snuck around laughing into her phone, thinking she had me fooled. Yeah? She had nothing. No husband. No money. No future with the man she thought was her escape plan. It was a slow kind of destruction. A silent one. And that's what made it so satisfying. I exhaled, feeling lighter than I had in months. Appreciate the update, Lou. No problem. You want me to keep tabs on her? I considered it. But no, there was no need. She was finished. Nah, I said. Let her figure out how deep the hole is on her own. Lou chuckled. Cold, man? I smiled. The best revenge always is. There's a special kind of peace that comes after everything is burned. I woke up late that morning, stretched out in a bed that didn't hold the scent of betrayal in a city where no one knew my name. The coffee tasted better, the air smelled cleaner, and the weight that had been pressing against my ribs for months was finally gone. Virginia, meanwhile, was drowning. I knew this because Lou, being the dedicated investigator that he was, couldn't help but send me another update even after I told him it wasn't necessary. You're gonna love this one. Attached was a grainy photo of Virginia sitting alone in a cheap cafe, staring at her phone like it held the answers to her miserable life. She looked exhausted. Messy. Like someone who hadn't slept, who had spent the last 48 hours pacing, crying, begging the universe to undo the disaster she never saw coming. I took a sip of my coffee, smirking. She deserved worse. By noon, my phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. I didn't need to guess who it was. Christopher, please. I just need to talk to you. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, just to amuse myself, I typed back. Who's this? The reply came instantly. Don't do this. You know who this is. Please, I need to talk to you. I could practically hear the desperation in her voice. And it felt good. I set my phone down without answering. Let her sit with the silence. Let her feel what I had felt every time she lied. Every time she snuck out. Every time she smiled at me with another man's name sitting on the tip of her tongue. Revenge wasn't about rage. It was about absence. And Virginia was finally realizing what it felt like to be without me. By evening, another text came. I'm sorry. Please. Just give me a chance to explain. I chuckled. Explain? What was there to explain? That she had cheated? That she had lied? That she had gambled everything we had built together on some smug bastard who didn't even want her in the end? I typed back. Explain what? How you lied to my face. How you spent my money on hotel rooms and perfume for another man. The dots appeared, typing, then stopped. For a long moment, nothing. Then, finally. I messed up. But you didn't have to do this to me. Ah. There it was. Not a real apology. Not regret for what she had done. Just regret that I had outplayed her. That's the thing about people like Virginia, they never think they'll lose. They assume they'll get away with it. That there will always be a safety net, a backup plan. But this time, the net was gone. And she was in free fall. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. She could sit in the emptiness she created. Because I was already gone. And I wasn't coming back. Desperation is a funny thing. At first, it's just panic, quick, sharp, like a drowning person flailing for something solid. But when there's nothing to hold on to, when the world refuses to bend to your will, that's when desperation turns to something ugly. And Virginia was getting real ugly. The texts kept coming, each one a little more frantic than the last. Christopher, please. I'm sorry. Just call me. I don't know what to do. Everything is gone. You can't just leave me like this. Ah, there it was. Not an apology. Not accountability. Just you can't do this to me. Like she was the victim here. Like she hadn't spent months sneaking around behind my back, laughing into her phone while I sat in the same room, blind and trusting. I didn't answer. Let her stew. But then something interesting happened. It was a little after midnight when Lou sent me another update. Guess who's trying to find you? Attached was a photo. Virginia, sitting across from a man in a dark booth. Late night diner, cheap coffee in front of her. And the man? The private investigator I had hired. I raised an eyebrow, smirking. Well. The next morning, Lou called. His laughter came through the phone before he even spoke. Your wife is grasping at straws, man. Ex-wife, I corrected. What did she want? She wants to find you, he said, amused. Thinks she can track you down, get some of the money back, maybe talk you into fixing things. I chuckled. And I fed her exactly what you told me to. Good. Virginia thought she was smart. Thought she could find me, corner me, maybe even guilt me into undoing the damage. But I was always 5 steps ahead. When Virginia left the diner that night, she thought she had a lead. Thought she had hope. She didn't. What she had was a trail of dead ends, fake addresses, and a PI who was being paid twice to make sure she never got anywhere near me. She'd spend days chasing shadows, calling numbers that didn't exist, looking for a man who had erased himself from her world. I wasn't watching it happen in real time, but I didn't need to. I knew Virginia. I knew how her mind worked, how she clung to illusions of control. She had spent our entire marriage assuming she was untouchable, that I was just another fool who'd never question her. Yeah? She was alone. Broke. Desperate. And she was starting to realize it wasn't temporary. Lou kept me updated, even though I never asked. I think he was enjoying the show as much as I was. She's losing it, man. She tried calling the bank again today. They shut her down. She went back to see her little boyfriend. Guess what? His wife found out. Big drama. Ah. Karma was working overtime. I almost felt bad for not taking credit. Almost. Then came the final crack. The moment Virginia truly, fully understood that this wasn't just a temporary setback. It was permanent. It happened 3 days later when she got a message from the last person she ever expected. The private investigator. The same one she had hired to find me. I had Lou set it up perfectly. A little bait. A little build-up. Just enough to make her think she still had some kind of advantage left. The message was simple. We need to talk. I have something you should know. Of course, she took the bait. What else did she have left? They met in another late-night diner. Cheap coffee, tired faces, the hum of fluorescent lights. And Lou told her the truth. Not all of it, just enough. Enough to let her know that I hadn't just left. I had planned this. I had known about her affair for months. Had seen the photos. Had known every little detail, the hotels, the gifts, the careful little lies she had spun, thinking she was so clever. And I had waited. Waited until I had all the leverage. Waited until I could make my move without a single legal loose end. Waited until the moment I could pull the rug out so completely that she wouldn't even have time to scream before she hit the ground. Lou said she just sat there, staring at him, lips slightly parted, eyes hollow. Did he? She swallowed. Did he ever love me? Lou had laughed at that part when he told me. Can you believe that? That's what she asked. Not why did he do this or how did he find out. No. She wanted to know if you loved her. I had smiled, slow and sharp. And what did you say? Lou chuckled. Told her maybe he did. But not anymore. Virginia hadn't said a word after that. She had just sat there, hands curled into fists, staring down at her untouched coffee. Revenge isn't about rage. It's not about screaming, fighting, or throwing punches. Real revenge is silent. It's the absence of a safety net. The slow, dawning realization that there's no way out. And Virginia was drowning in it. She didn't try to contact me again. No more texts, no more desperate calls. Because she finally understood. There was no fixing this. No bargaining. No second chances. I had taken everything. And I had left her with exactly what she deserved. Nothing. A week passed. Then 2. Lou still sent updates every now and then. Not because I needed them, but because he enjoyed it. She's looking rough, man. She's been couch surfing with friends. But that won't last. Credits shot, no job, no rich boyfriend. She's running out of options. It was almost too easy. Virginia had spent her entire life living in comfort, never having to struggle, never worrying about where her next meal would come from. Now, she was just another person scrambling to survive. A tragic little cautionary tale. A nobody. And I didn't even have to lift a finger to destroy her. She did it all by herself. One night, Lou sent one last update. She finally broke. Left town. I stared at the message for a long moment, then smiled. She was running, trying to escape her own ruin. Pathetic. But I wasn't surprised. Because people like Virginia, they never learn. They just look for the next person to use. The next lie to tell. The next fool who won't see them coming, until it's too late. But I wasn't that fool anymore. And I never would be again. I poured myself a drink, stepped out onto the balcony of my new apartment, and looked out over the city. A fresh start. A clean slate. A life that was mine again. No betrayal. No lies. No Virginia. I had one. And she? She was nothing more than a bad memory. I raised my glass to the night sky, smirking. Here's to you, sweetheart. Then I took a slow, satisfying sip. And forgot her forever. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. If you liked the story, please give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm show my content more often. If you are new to the channel, do not forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep making more stories for you.